Hello, everybody, and welcome to the October 15th episode of Trips and Traps. I'm Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
And once again, we have two segments to bring you, 3 races each, so let's get to it. The first race will be from the 7th of October, race number 6. A favorite in the race, we're going to take a look at Inte Domine, a filly against Colts here, went off 3-5 for Linda Rice.
Yeah, and this is a horse, I mean, the whole world saw the trouble this horse had, and it was sort of self-created trouble. And there, you'll see her there in the greenish silks, number 7, and it's a situation, I mean, we're sort of belaboring the obvious a little bit in this race, but I don't know. I just, look, we think the world of Ramon Dominguez as a rider, and he's just, what can you say? The guy does everything right. But it feels like he found himself trouble with this horse. On a short-priced horse, a filly against Colts just couldn't lose, and he found trouble and caused her to lose.
Yeah, it seems like, even back here already, Inte Domine had to steady a little bit. It just seems like he's very intent on saving ground and not losing too much ground in the turns, which gets him in a jackpot some of the times, and especially here at Belmont, where we've talked about it at length, where the turns are wider. It's just not as important to save ground here as it is at Aqueduct and Saratoga, especially on the turf here. So, to try to get yourself in a spot where you want to save ground and try to do everything right for the horse, you're on a 3-5 shot. You just want to put her in the best spot you can to win the race and have the clearest run.
Yeah, you get the feeling that she would have had a better chance to win this race if she just sat it by herself on the outside rail the whole way around. And sometimes when horses need help, it's good. Ramon does the right thing in these turf races by being patient, but sometimes you get yourself jammed up between horses and it just turns into a nightmare here, and we're basically finding different ways to say the same thing. And you see Inte Domine going between horses at this point, and all right, I get it, but he saves ground there, he stays in the 2-path, but remember, we're still dealing with a horse that is much the best here, and even looking at her on paper, she looked like she was the best, and you're going to see what happens in the stretch, and it's not good.
Yeah, here, I mean, you have to think about angling out and trying to, okay, well, if you lose a little ground here, just have the idea to take her outside here instead of still trying to go through in between this hole here. And you saw Inte Domine steady once there and then have to steady again here. And at this point, she's got no shot.
Yeah, the winner's already got a huge jump and momentum on her. She's already 3 in front of her with full momentum past the 8th pole. And what is Inte Domine going to do? Sprout wings or something and go by her? As it turns out, she still almost wins the race. And she would have galloped here. There's no question about it. She was 10 tons the best. Now, you're not going to go anywhere with this horse betting her back, and this wasn't a particularly strong-looking field, though the winner was a Wayne Lucas horse trying the turf for the first time, so maybe he's okay, he against she's, but it's just a question of sometimes it feels like you don't want to ride every horse the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll take a look at a different kind of ride in our second race here. This is Lorraine Spain on October 9th, race number 2, and really doesn't have any trouble, but just undergoes a wide trip in a race that was dominated up front.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of a dynamics race, and we tried to mix it up a little. So we looked at a lot of races and didn't see anything major happening in any of them. We found a lot of races where little things went on, and the first thing to point out, and you'll see Lorraine Spain, she's actually well back, almost about 8th or so here, and the point being she's all the way on the outside, and she'll get closer, but she'll never get inside the 4-path in this race. And the winner of this race, Word of the Wise, she just crawled along on the front end. Now, she was the absolute speed, and she's in good form. She's really an improved horse, but there were other horses with enough speed. They shouldn't have gone 25 in this race, and I'm not exactly sure what was going on. It just felt like nobody went. Word of the Wise walked along. Horses were compromised, like AP Light, who's a 2-horse on the inside. But Lorraine Spain spends the entire race on the outside. And it felt like, to me, one of these turf races, you want horses with wide trips.
Well, in this race here, you wanted to bet next time wide trips, because the top 3 finishers, the 1, 3, and 2, and they're all skimming the rail here. And this just goes to show you how it is important to save ground in some kind of races here. As we were talking about before, when you're on the best horse, you want to just put yourself in the best position, have a clear run through the stretch. But this kind of race here, with the slow pace, dominated by horses that were up close and on the inside.
Yeah, there are some races where the races are won by how the race is run. There are a lot of them, especially turf races, and this is clearly the case. And you see right here, Lorraine Spain is making that wide move. She's well out in the 4-path here, and she's trying to win the race. And I thought she ran incredibly well in that she never gave up in the stretch, being so against the dynamics of the race. And once again, this race was won by a Word of the Wise and we're not criticizing her. She's in nice form, but she'd set a very, very slow pace, and she dominated the race from a dynamic standpoint, whereas horses like Lorraine Spain, and I thought she'd be the biggest price of the ones coming out of this race. It was interesting. Had no chance and still ran okay.
No chance, and you see the other two horses that we talked about in the turn where they were skimming up the inside fence there and then getting through and running second and third. Lorraine Spain actually managing to get pretty close to the second place finisher there, and I think that speaks volumes about her.
I agree, and I don't know how many more chances she'll get. The way it is this week, I expect it'll be snowing out in about a couple of days, but hopefully the weather will clear up. I think it's supposed to be nice next week, and we'll get some turf racing in and get another chance with Lorraine Spain, a similar spot with a little more pace. And now we're going to stay on the turf for actually one more race, and we're going to show another race from that day, the 9th, the 4th race. And a horse named Mint Maker is in this. This horse is entered on Friday here in a turf sprint. I kind of like her, but I got a feeling the race may be off the turf.
Here's Mint Maker breaking a step slowly or two coming out of the starting gate there, number 5 horse. A horse that's run a couple of times already for Gary Contessa. This was his first time in for a tag, and you're going to see the rider here make a mistake, I think, in just rushing him up inside here to become part of a fairly contentious pace in here. Actually, they went under 23 for the quarter, so it's a very contentious pace.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we see these slow pace races like the second race. I think the riders started compensating in the 3rd and 4th races after we saw the first 2 races that they were wire jobs in different courses. And here's Mint Maker, who broke slowly, stayed back to last, and zooming up there. And we've got also Unique Tail, who I thought got spun out wide in this race, very wide, and he's back behind the horses. At least he's waiting as they're running quickly up front. But boy, Mint Maker runs a very, very quick race. It's a quick race to get into the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a horse that, you don't really expect him to go on with it after making these kind of moves here, breaking slowly. This horse ran his race in the first quarter of a mile here, and you can't really expect too much out of the finish. We will see the 3 horse in here, Hudson Landing, back off the pace a little bit. Hudson Landing is going to get in a little bit of trouble, and I think it's going to be overrated trouble because he has every opportunity to win this race, as we'll see turning for home. But you see Mint Maker up here going on with it to run with the Lemon Mambo early on. The half's 46-2, and so consider where Mint Maker was at the start to make it up to the lead in the half and 46-2. Really did a lot of running in that middle part of the race.
Yeah, no question about it. I thought Mint Maker ran very interestingly well in this race relative to where he finished and how he had run in his other races. And yeah, I think Hudson Landing, some people will make it the trouble. You see him staying there behind Mint Maker as he's sort of pulling him back, but it's very temporary. How much ground did he lose? 3/4 of a length. He had so many good things happen for him, and there's Unique Tail out in the 7 path in there, and the winner is actually in the Purple Silks. He's about 3 wide in the turn, but he sat off the pace and he split horses, got a very nice ride in this race. But, it's sort of not unlike, in a way, to be fair, the first race we looked at with Inte Domine, where the rider saved ground, and the winner of this race is the favorite. So, sometimes you save ground, it works out. You don't want to get too overly critical when it doesn't. It just depends, I think, on what a layover, how the horse looks against the rest of the field. Though Mint Maker is the one I think Eric and I are hoping to get one more chance, if not 2, with this horse on the turf before we end the turf season. I don't know how good he is. I don't know if you do, but it's going to be a big price.
It'll be a big price, and I think he's better suited to sprinting, so we'll see if he gets back on the grass here one more time at Belmont, but you never know. Maybe a mile race at Aqueduct, something like that. He can take advantage of that early speed and set up shop on the front end and crawl things along with a little bit more patient ride.
Yeah, I just think he's a horse. You look like all these horses. You look and see where they end up, and you look at them in the fields, but these are horses that ran better than perhaps it looks on paper, and that's sort of what this is all about. Or sometimes horses ran worse than it might look on paper. But that does it for this week's episode of this first part of Trips and Traps. And of course, we love to get your comments. It's trips and traps at NYRAinc.com. Keep the thoughts coming. Give us a little help. We could certainly use it.
Stay tuned. We'll be back with another segment.